Chelsea McBride walked into the courtroom with a smug smile, convinced that no one could touch her. But when the judge delivered a sentence she never saw coming, her entire world came crashing down. A woman who once thought she was untouchable must now fight to survive in a place where her privilege means nothing. Will Chelsea find a way out, or will her arrogance be her ultimate downfall? What do you think awaits Chelsea behind those prison walls? Share your thoughts in the comments. Now let's dive into this gripping story. The courtroom fell silent as Chelsea McBride strode in, her head high, a smug smirk playing on her lips. She wasn't just walking, she was making a statement. Draped over her shoulders was a t-shirt emblazoned with a racist slogan, bold and unapologetic. The moment she stepped past the gallery, a ripple of reaction spread like wildfire. Gasps, muttered curses, shaking heads of disbelief. Even the defense attorney, standing beside her, stiffened at the audacity of it. The jury exchanged uneasy glances. Judge Malcolm Graves, a towering figure behind the bench, sat utterly still. His sharp blue eyes locked onto Chelsea like a predator sizing up its prey. But he didn't speak, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. And that was far more terrifying than if he had erupted in rage. Chelsea embraced the silence, letting it stretch. She wanted them to feel uncomfortable. She wanted them to squirm. With mock innocence, she spread her arms wide. "What?" she said, her voice dripping with arrogance. "This is America. I have the right to free speech, don't I?" Her words slashed through the tension in the room, but instead of breaking it, they made it even thicker. Judge Graves finally leaned forward. His voice, when it came, was measured, deliberate, dangerous. "Ah, yes, freedom." A pause. "But let's talk about consequences." The smirk faltered on Chelsea's lips. The air grew heavy, like a storm brewing in the distance. Judge Graves lifted the file before him, flipping through its pages with agonizing patience. Then, with a single movement, he snapped it shut. "Miss McBride," he said, his tone almost casual, "your legal team requested a suspended sentence, assuming you would walk out of here today. But given your behavior, I see no reason to grant you such leniency." Chelsea's smirk evaporated. Her confidence cracked, yes, but she quickly masked it, crossing her arms defiantly. "You can't be serious." Judge Graves didn't acknowledge her outburst. "You are hereby sentenced to 90 days in county jail." The courtroom exploded. Gasps, shouts, the rustle of reporters scrambling to type their headlines. Chelsea's entire body went rigid. No, you can't do that." She turned, searching desperately for her lawyer, but even he looked stunned, caught off guard by a verdict no one had seen coming. "Your Honor, this is justice." Judge Graves cut him off, his voice unwavering. The bailiffs stepped forward. "No, this isn't fair." Chelsea's voice rose to a shriek as the officers grabbed her arms. "You can't do this. This is America. I have rights." She struggled, twisted, fought, but the bailiffs were unmoved, their grips firm. Judge Graves simply watched her, his face unreadable. With one final desperate cry, Chelsea lunged, but the courtroom doors slammed shut behind her. Bang! The sound echoed like a prison gate locking for the first time. She was no longer in control, no longer the privileged daughter of a powerful family. She was just another prisoner now. And for the first time in her life, Chelsea McBride was truly afraid. Chelsea had never felt so exposed. She stood in the freezing processing room, her arms wrapped around her bare body, her nails digging into her skin as if she could somehow shield herself from the humiliation. The female correctional officers, hard-faced, unimpressed, barked orders at her like she was less than human. "Strip." Chelsea hesitated. "Did I stutter?" One of them sneered. A lump lodged in her throat, but she did as they said. She had no choice. Hands probed, inspecting her in the most degrading ways imaginable. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but she could only stand there, cheeks burning with shame. Laughter erupted from the guards. "Ain't so high and mighty now, huh?" One chuckled, nudging her with a baton. Chelsea squeezed her eyes shut. This was temporary. This was just 90 days. She could survive this. But deep down, she wasn't so sure anymore. Dressed in a rough, baggy orange jumpsuit, Chelsea was shoved forward into the main block. The air inside was thick with sweat, metal, and the stale scent of desperation. Eyes followed her. Predatory eyes, curious eyes, hostile eyes. But none of them struck as much fear into her as Denise Johnson's. Denise sat on the edge of her bunk, arms crossed, watching Chelsea like a cat eyeing a wounded bird. A slow, cold smirk spread across her lips. Well, well, Denise drawled. Look who it is. Chelsea's stomach dropped. She knew that voice. She knew that face. Months ago, Denise was just another woman on the street, a woman Chelsea and her friends had taunted, humiliated, and left bruised on the pavement. And now, there was no escape. Ain't so fun when the tables turn, huh, Barbie? Denise leaned forward, elbows resting on her knees, voice dangerously soft. Let me be the first to welcome you to your new home. A chill ran down Chelsea's spine. There were no bodyguards here, no lawyers, no privilege, no way out. Chelsea kept her head down, avoiding trouble, but trouble found her anyway. In the dimly lit prison yard, a group of women closed in around her, their tattoos dark ink threats against pale skin. The leader, a bald woman with a jagged scar across her cheek, smirked as she cracked her knuckles. Rich girl thinks she's better than us? Chelsea's heartbeat thundered. She turned, searching for help. For Denise. Denise was watching, but she didn't move, didn't lift a finger, just let it happen. The first punch sent Chelsea sprawling into the dirt. Pain exploded through her ribs. A second fist snapped her head sideways. She tasted blood. The world blurred as boots slammed into her gut, her back, her legs. She curled up, arms shielding her face, her body screaming in agony. This wasn't like the movies. No one was coming to save her. She gasped, barely conscious, as she saw Denise turn away. Not out of malice, but indifference. Now you know, Denise murmured. Now you understand. Chelsea lay there, her body broken, her pride shattered. For the first time in her life, she truly understood fear. Chelsea sat on the edge of her cot, her ribs still aching from the beating. She had spent 2 days licking her wounds, barely eating, barely speaking. But now, she understood something crystal clear. No one survives alone in here. She had 2 options. Neither of them was good. Join the Aryan Brotherhood, the white supremacist gang that ruled the prison's underbelly. They had connections, protection, and influence. They could offer security, maybe even a reduced sentence if she played her cards right. Or swallow her pride and ask Denise for protection. But that meant bowing down to the very woman she once humiliated and brutalized. Neither choice sat well with her. But doing nothing meant one thing. She wouldn't make it out alive. Chelsea. She looked up, startled. Across the glass partition of the visitation room, Trevor Harris, her ex-boyfriend, Jack, the same man who had introduced her to her twisted ideology, sat waiting. A smirk curled on his lips, but his eyes were unreadable. Trev? She whispered. Tough time, huh? He leaned forward, his voice smooth. I came to offer you a way out. Her pulse quickened. How? Trevor tapped a finger against the glass. The Aryans can make things easier for you. Keep you safe. Maybe even pull some strings to shave time off your sentence. Chelsea's stomach twisted. What's the catch? His smirk widened. You prove you belong. Her hands clenched into fists. And how exactly do I do that? Trevor leaned in, his voice turning deadly soft. They'll let you know soon enough. Later that night, as Chelsea sat in the dimly lit common area, a shadow loomed over her. Denise. The woman didn't speak at first, just stared at her with those cold, knowing eyes. Then, finally, she chuckled. You really think those Aryan boys are your ticket out of here? Chelsea tensed. I don't have a choice. Denise's expression darkened. They don't give favors, Barbie. One day they'll cash in on that debt, and trust me, you won't like the price. Chelsea's throat felt dry. What do you care, she muttered. Denise scoffed. I don't, but I do enjoy watching fools dig their own graves. She turned to walk away, then paused, glancing back. Just remember, they'll own you, and by the time you realize it, it'll be too late. Chelsea swallowed hard, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. Chelsea sat across from Angela Red Carter, the ruthless leader of the Aryan Brotherhood inside the prison walls. The cafeteria was buzzing with noise, but in this moment, all she could hear was Red's voice, low and deliberate. Time to prove you belong, sweetheart. A folded napkin slid across the table. Inside, a name. Jessica Reynolds, a blonde woman from another cell block. She talked to the wrong people, Red murmured. You handle this, and we'll take care of you. You screw up, well, she tapped her knuckles against the table, a silent warning. Chelsea felt her heart hammer against her ribs. This was it, the moment she would either sink or swim. The thought of backing out crossed her mind for only a second. But then she remembered Denise's cold smirk. She remembered being beaten to the ground like an animal. No. She wasn't going to be a victim again. Not ever again. The prison showers were empty, except for the sound of water hitting the tiles. Chelsea stepped inside, heart pounding, fingers wrapped around a crude, sharpened toothbrush, a weapon given to her by Red's crew. Jessica stood with her back turned, rinsing shampoo from her hair. She had no idea what was coming. Chelsea hesitated. For a split second, she saw herself as the person she used to be, the girl who had walked into court with untouchable arrogance. But that girl was gone. With one deep breath, Chelsea lunged forward. The first stab landed just below Jessica's ribs. She screamed, twisting in shock, but Chelsea didn't stop. Adrenaline surged through her veins. Another stab, and another. Jessica collapsed, gasping, clutching at her wound, her eyes wide with terror. For a moment, Chelsea stood over her, chest rising and falling, gripping the makeshift blade with shaking hands. The old Chelsea would have felt guilt. But this Chelsea, she felt powerful. She had been the hunted. Now, she was the hunter. Back at the Aryan table, Chelsea dropped the weapon onto Red's tray, her expression stone cold. Red smirked. "Damn, girl. I didn't think you had it in you." Chelsea shrugged, forcing down the rapid beat of her pulse. "Guess you were wrong." The other gang members chuckled, nodding in approval. Chelsea felt it then, a weight lifting off her shoulders, the fear that had clung to her since day one, melting away. For the first time since stepping into this hellhole, she wasn't weak anymore. She wasn't prey anymore. No one would ever lay a hand on her again. And for the first time, she smiled. But across the cafeteria, Denise watched her silently. No smirk, no mockery, just a knowing, heavy gaze. Chelsea pretended not to notice. She didn't want to admit it, but something about that look unsettled her. It was the look of someone who had seen this all before, and who knew exactly where it was leading. Chelsea was running out of time. She had seen it happen before. One day, a girl was part of the Aryan Brotherhood's inner circle, protected, respected. The next, she was nothing but a cautionary tale. It was only a matter of time before they turned on her too. She had played their game, followed their rules. But now, she needed a way out, and the only person who could help her was Denise Johnson. Denise found her alone in the yard, watching from a distance like a wolf circling prey. She leaned in, her voice low, sharp. "I can get you out of this mess, Barbie." Chelsea's jaw tightened. "And what's the catch?" Denise's smirk was slow, dangerous. "You do exactly what I say. No questions, no hesitation." Chelsea didn't have to think long. If she stayed loyal to the Aryans, they'd eventually turn on her. If she betrayed them, they'd want her dead. Either way, she was screwed. But at least with Denise, she had a chance. Deal. It started small. Chelsea began planting doubts among the Aryan ranks, whispered in the right ears, fed Denise small but valuable pieces of information. Who was calling the shots, where contraband was being moved, who was getting ready to make a move. And Denise used it well. She played the prison's underworld like a chessboard, striking fast, quiet, and deadly. One by one, Aryan leaders disappeared into solitary confinement. Some were beaten, some were transferred, and some would never be seen again. Chelsea watched it all unfold, and for the first time in months, she felt a flicker of relief. She had done it. She had won. Or so she thought. Chelsea sat in the dim light of her cell, staring at the concrete walls, finally breathing easy. Tomorrow, she'd be released early. Denise had kept her word. She had survived. But just as she was drifting off to sleep, a folded piece of paper slid under her cell door. Frowning, she picked it up, fingers trembling as she unfolded it. 3 words. "You're not free." Her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, she turned her head toward the bars and saw a pair of cold, familiar eyes watching her from the shadows. Red, still here, still alive, and still waiting for revenge. The prison gates slammed shut behind her. Chelsea inhaled deeply, filling her lungs with air that wasn't tainted by sweat, steel, and fear. For the first time in months, she stood under the open sky. She was free. Or at least, that's what they wanted her to think. As she stepped forward, the world felt different. The air was crisper, the sun warmer, but nothing reached her bones. Something inside her had shifted, hardened, a part of her that had died in that prison and wasn't coming back. She wasn't the same girl who had walked into that courtroom, full of arrogance and privilege. That girl was gone. What remained was something else entirely. Trevor was waiting for her. Leaning against his black muscle car, arms crossed, a smirk playing at his lips, Chelsea felt a flicker of relief. For a moment, she thought, maybe, just maybe, she still had one person left. But as she got closer, she saw it. The ink on his neck, a freshly tattooed insignia, the Aryan Brotherhood symbol. Her stomach plummeted. Trevor? Her voice was small, uncertain. He shrugged, his smile never reaching his eyes. You didn't actually think you'd get away, did you? Her pulse roared in her ears. You set me up, she whispered. Trevor tilted his head, mocking, amused. I gave you a chance, babe. You chose wrong. Chelsea's fingernails dug into her palms. She should have seen it coming. She had spent months betraying, lying, surviving, and now the betrayal was hers to taste. Days passed. She kept her head down, tried to live normally, tried to convince herself that she could move on. But then it arrived. A small envelope slipped under her door. No return address, no name, just a single Polaroid photograph inside. Chelsea's breath hitched as she pulled it out. A man's body, throat slit ear to ear, lying in a pool of dark, congealing blood. Her hands trembled as she flipped it over. 4 words were scrawled in red ink. You will never escape. Chelsea stumbled into the bathroom, gripping the edges of the sink. Her heart pounded against her ribs. The mirror stared back at her. For a long moment, she just stood there, looking at the woman in the reflection. Eyes colder, face hollowed out by survival. The girl she had once been, she was a ghost now, a stranger. And for the first time since she'd been released, Chelsea finally understood. She had walked out of prison, but she was never truly free. Not from them, and not from herself. Did this story leave you thinking? If it did, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who would love a gripping, thought-provoking tale. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories to life. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest content. Every comment, like, and share fuels our passion to keep telling stories that matter. What are your thoughts on Chelsea's journey? Drop your opinions in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.